With that, folks, I'm going to bring Laura Magdalene Eisenhower on the show with us, and let's find out a little more. It's always good to educate ourselves. Good evening, Laura. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Michael?
I am doing fine, and it is a pleasure to have you here tonight. I thank you for taking time out.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really good to be here.
Oh, absolutely. Last time we had some issues and we weren't able to get it done, and I'm glad that we got you back because there was a lot of disappointed people last time. They love hearing from you. You've got a lot of fans, Laura.
Oh, that's cool.
But I thought we'd start out maybe with a little background. How tell us again, and I know you probably get tired of talking about it, but we never get tired of hearing it. Tell us a little bit about how all this began, where it all started with you.
Gosh, it's just been a lifelong thing, I have to say. It's changed a lot over the course of, the years. Starting, as a child, just kind of really being hit with just this concept of, gosh, I'm on a mission. I really can tell, I'm here for something very specific. And over the course of my life, I've just been making more and more sense out of it. I think it really relates to, just what I was sensitive to energetically, as far as what was going on the planet. And just really feeling into my own personal soul journey. And then, you got to ask a bunch of questions if you end up in the Eisenhower family. It's kind of like, okay. I've just been really processing a lot of information, my whole life. And it's really been about connecting dots. And I've just had a very interesting, experience along the way that's just been very unique to my own journey. And then how it relates to Eisenhower's administration and some of the things that went on during his presidency and things related to the Second World War, and how I've just always felt a link with him. I just started to see in the bigger picture that it has a lot to do with, how we relate to power, authority, and, government in a world where, considering what the needs of Gaia and humanity are not really being addressed. And so I've just felt like, okay, leadership now, really seems to be more about discovering more and more about what our true origins are, what has been kept secret from us, and, what we're really made of and what our potential is. And so that brings us into this window period we're in. And that's always been a focal point throughout my life, this window period, this 2012 December 21st date, and how it extends into a larger window of opportunity for us to move into higher earth energies. And I was understanding it through, the Venus transits and my connection to the Magdalene Sophia energies, and how a lot about the military-industrial complex and some of the darker agendas are trying to keep us from what this shift is really about. And that's what, these timelines, when people talk about timelines, artificial timelines and organic ascension timelines, it's kind of like, always in front of us as a choice.
And it's so hard to grasp for the average person to grasp these, these other timelines. I could think about it and I could say, yeah, I almost would bet my life that they exist. But to be able to actually wrap my mind around them is just, it's almost impossible in some ways,
Yeah, it's a lot, and I like to try and simplify it. It's sort of like the difference between, seeing a flower and admiring it, and then understanding the biology of it and everything that makes it function in the way that it does. And then with all the technologies we have, that are capable of mimicking creation, we're sort of being fed a imitation version, but in the form of sort of a nightmare, where our creative energies are being used, our minds are being controlled and we're being manipulated, and it's very difficult to know where the true path lies without doing immense inner work and really looking deep within the self, and really paying attention to what our bodies are trying to tell us, with the symptoms it has, and just, that inner voice that it's just crying out saying, is this really all there is? Is this really, is this reality? Just some of the expectations and programmings related to, I guess, how it should look and unfold. But of course, it depends on what culture you're born into, and, kind of, some of these other, things. And then, just what war has done to us and how so much has tried to conquer and divide us. And then the culture of what, children are raised under, with just the media and the television and, just, what's happening with our food and just how the school systems are. And so I never was interested in any of that. I was always thinking outside of the box and always journeying into these multidimensional realms. And I felt like I was kind of living a double life. And, so the mission is really to empower what this organic ascension is about. There's a lot of teachings that I think lead us astray and make it not so much about it being an inner shift within us, but more about something that's just going to happen outside of us that we should expect. And, I like to bring in a lot of focus to, what it's going to take to be in alignment with it, and, what we need to do to, be plugged into, what's real instead of what's artificial.
And you're right. I mean, we've got whoever's at the helm, whoever's in total control of all this. They've recreated everything. It's like they're trying to become those gods that we've read about. They want to create life. They want to control the weather. They want to be able to take life. If they could build another Earth, an entire artificial Earth, they do it, and they might have already done that. I don't know.
Well, that's what this matrix is. It's like this big overlay on, a very divine planet that's seated as an ascension planet. And, events in our galactic history created a necessity for us to have this experience in order to understand the right use of power, because we're in a free will universe, and the concept of ego, creates an identification with power that isn't always in alignment with, unity and staying connected with, what's unfolding as far as, what this planetary body has to offer.
Right.
And it just, throws us off track, and that means that we're, empowering a artificial timeline if we're not really, understanding, nature and, this planetary body and our DNA and our blueprint, because it's all been compromised, and we're born with amnesia, and so we're very vulnerable, and we've been taken advantage of. And so to me, they're negative ego structures, and we easily enable them when we adopt these programmings. And a lot of people do, and they still, talk about conspiracy, but, it really takes doing the work. Not just, being in touch with the information, but what it means to deprogram ourselves and, really like work together, and unify and, expose and bust the imposter. It's kind of like if you're in a relationship and you're being cheated on, and you find out, it's like everything's going to change from that point on. But as long as you're being duped, you can tell something's wrong, but you might not be able to put your finger on it. And now it's like everything's been exposed, and it's like, okay, now what are we going to do?
Well, then you also got those people who know they're being cheated on, and they choose to look the other way because they don't know how to handle it.
Right, and it's a huge deconstruction of their reality, and it can create a lot of upheaval. And because a lot of purging is involved, sometimes those that are trying to help, get thrown up on. It's kind of like it's heavy. And so, that's why I do readings and sessions, because if I'm going to put out this information, and if I'm going to be on a mission, I want to be available to people. I want to help them, through some of these initiations that the cosmos and some of these planetary alignments are helping to trigger, but we get taken advantage of. And so I just, want to make myself available to step in and say, hey, go into the self, and, let's really look at what you're made of. And we have our unique, soul signature and our own unique journey, but, that concept of oneness, to me is diversity and harmony. And, there's a common ground that we can all unite upon, but we have to really respect the individual and our unique contribution, and not try and steer people and be the very thing that we're trying to liberate ourselves from, which is presenting another form of control, which is, pushing belief systems on people. So I try and really empower the individual, because if we can turn on awareness to all the abilities that we have, people, can find their way. And life is the great teacher. I mean, it gives us everything we need. And, if we really simplify things and allow, ourselves to be taught by our experiences and what our physical bodies are trying to tell us through symptoms and, what that inner calling is trying to say to us, we can really, emerge and be very empowered and liberated. And I think these are amazing times, but we have to, move through either the denial or the anger of betrayal. And, and then once we move through that, I think we just have a great opportunity to look at our skills and abilities and unite and start our own paradigm and empower ourselves as leaders and starve the system and walk away and start our own thing. Because why would we want to continue to vote for something that we already recognize is not dealing with the issues at hand? There's people still hungry. Our skies are still being sprayed. Injustices are still rampant. And, it's time to really look to ourselves and unite, because the governments are not going to really do anything. And I'm not saying, there's not going to be good leaders stepping in, but we got to get out of the dependency and start to be more self-sufficient, and then, link up with, what it means to be a part of a community and the greater whole, the mandala, the web of life on a deeper level as souls.
Yeah, and the way I see it is you're never going to get anybody real in leadership until everybody who's there now gets taken out. And I don't mean killed or any of that. I'm not going that far. Maybe some of them might deserve something like that, but I mean, cleaning all the seats out. Everybody needs to be dealt with accordingly, whether it be, if they've been corrupt, they need to be dealt with in the justice system, a real justice system, or at least nothing else fired and gotten out of there. They've held control for way too long, and what they're doing to this planet is really sad. I mean, you talked about belief systems, and I've talked with people who sit back, they believe this, they believe that the aliens are coming to save us, or they believe that Jesus is coming back to save us, or they believe that white hats are coming to save us, and that makes them feel so comfortable that they sit back and do nothing. And that's what I worry about with belief systems. And so, my thing is, people, check the facts for yourself, get the information out there. I mean, we are in interesting times, but we're also in it feels like we're on the border. There's a test ahead of us, and I don't know. Right now, I don't think we're passing it.
I think a lot of us are, and we almost have to look at it on an individual level.
Right.
I don't think we're all heading in the same direction. I think those that choose to stay asleep and plugged into the matrix are going to have to live out what that means. All the information's out there. There's assistance. There's all sorts of things that are here to help us, but not in a way of saving us. I mean, it's just like our health. Our immune system's not going to kick in if we keep trashing our body, and if we are holding on to thought forms and belief systems or a negative, outlook that, counteract what nature naturally knows how to do, which is to heal, restore, and regenerate. The mind control doesn't enable us to go through these processes. We give our power away so easily. And if we look at, our unification as like boosting the immune system of the planet and our work on finding internal balance, then, there's nothing that's able to get in. But as long as we're fractured and divided and conquered on that level of, where the false flags and all the different programmings have steered us towards, in social engineering, then we're easily fed on. I mean, any body that's out of balance is, it easily attracts germs and viruses and parasites. And, and the thing is too, if we don't understand, what we need to release and what we need to do to maintain healthy, energetic bodies, then it's just like what we see in a kitchen. If food's left out, flies come. If we don't throw away and compost, it gets really unhealthy. And if we don't find a way to master taking care of our energetic body in the same way we would our physical environment, you know, I mean, the same laws apply. So we have to just kind of step back and, you know, ask ourselves, I mean, if we're feeling attacked, if we're feeling unwell, I mean, what have we allowed to accumulate in our emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies? I mean, it's easy when we're looking at things in the physical. You know, it's the stuff we can't see that we tend to neglect. And then it just ends up, you know, being in their hands because, you know, we feel desperation and dependency. And it's a trap because really, you know, it's a lot more simple than we realize. If we can just sort of look at how nature is and how everything that we create has a byproduct that needs to be thrown away or recycled, we can find an efficiency that helps us to get through our daily lives without, you know, getting overloaded with all the heaviness around us. You know, we have to, you know, protect ourselves and shield ourselves and keep our minds free and keep our emotions clear, but it doesn't happen through denial or forcing ourselves to just be positive and fluffy. We have to, you know, go through what we need to and be real with ourselves, you know, to, you know, really not miss anything. And it's that thoroughness we need, you know, when we're doing that work.
Yeah, and it's almost like, I mean, I say this all the time. I think it's true that we are getting hit from every direction. I mean, if it's not from the air, from the sprays, it's from, you know, the poisons in the foods, and you got to be careful. And now they don't have to label if it's a GMO food or what have you. So, and then the water, the poisons they put in the water, and God knows what else they're doing. And with all that, I mean, it's really hard, and it's really, I could see where an average person would get overwhelmed by all this and say, oh, the hell with it all, there's nothing I can do. But, you know, really, when it comes down to it, the best thing we can do is expose them. And, you know, when it's our time, it's our time. And you know, I think whatever we soak up here, and knowledge-wise, for our consciousness, I think we take with us. So,
yes, and that's how I feel. I mean, we're here for spiritual and soul development. And, I mean, this portion of the multidimensional body of this planet, you know, has given us this portion of her body to kind of see where we're going wrong. You know, it's at her detriment, but there's much more to her than just this, you know, area that we're occupying. And it is overwhelming, but we have to understand that we're moving into a phase of recognizing that spirit holds dominion over physical matter, you know, and all these different health cycles we've been in, it's been physicality and matter that has held dominion, you know, where we're in survival, or we're dealing with epidemics, or we're dealing with war, and we're dealing with all these survival needs. And, you know, with these rulers, and it's basically like, okay, we have to cut our ties with them. We have to cut the relationship with them so that we can move on and connect with, you know, the elements, and connect with spirit, and connect with this planetary body, because it's encoded with, you know, its own blossoming, its own highest potential. And we can shield ourselves because as we move into these higher energies, we are able to assimilate and address some of these assaults in a way that we can't when we're in a lower density vibration. And when we are in a low density vibration, normally it's because we've bought into the programming or the fear or what the artificial timelines, you know, want us to attach ourselves to, you know, by presenting this false reality that people take as, you know, a reality. I mean, it is real, but there's something else that exists
and
beneath it that we're connected to on a DNA level, you know.
And I was gonna say I think they're using technologies like even through Wi-Fi's and things like that. They're using these technologies to disturb our vibrations, because if you could, you know, put on a pair of glasses and see every different kind of signal and microwave and all these things that are going through the air around you, you would probably feel like you were drowning in an ocean of radio type signals. But you know, so I think that it's designed that way almost, that, you know, they're trying to keep us somehow, I don't know, off balance with all this.
Well, definitely, big time. It's you know, I think every day, I think a lot of us are just trying to maintain balance. And, you know, the thing is, when you get hit with a negative energy or a distortion or a manipulation or an attack, it's just important to try and counteract it with a higher vibration and feed it back, you know, something that, you know, influences its wave pattern. It's kind of like if somebody's going to throw you negative energy and you don't stoop to that level, and you continually function from your own instructions, your own dreams and visions, then you're always sending out an energy that actually can counteract the stuff that's being thrown at you. But when we're weakened, when we are imbalanced, when we are relating more to our wounds and our fractures and where we don't feel completely whole, there's not a whole lot that shields us, and it gets right into us, and it can be very detrimental. And I think a lot of us go through unwellness and imbalance until we recognize that we can be senior to these lower forces, and we can bounce back. I mean, that's part of, like, I think the process is that we feel the effects, and we feel a reaction, but then we can begin to activate the powers that can transmute it, and this is where we have to be alchemists. I mean, we're turning the lead of this human experience into gold, and with the Venus transits forming a pentagram in the sky, it's basically showing that the love energy, and just how the cosmos is operating, and the greater intelligence is helping us to turn these reversals around, and it relates to the core sun within this planet. It relates to the alignments going on in the sky. It relates to how we're, in alignment with the galactic plane right now. And natural alchemy is happening on a cosmic and earthly level. But if we're distracted, and if we are, constantly in a state of anxiety, and, we're becoming the effect of all these different assaults, then it's very difficult to bring these energies in, or to, bring them through, our feet chakra from the earth. And we just have to, give ourselves a break, and we have to be, willing to adjust our lifestyles to accommodate us more, instead of trying to meet the demands of, whatever has been presented to us, like having to work a 9-to-5 job, having to, be in the system and take care of needs that we can probably, navigate around in a whole nother way, by, choosing to take some risks, and trust that there's, a greater abundance, and there's a greater security coming, from our connection with the universe and spirit than anything the system can give us. And that false sense of security is what keeps people from, stepping out of all of it. It doesn't mean that we're going to be able to get off the grid, but we can certainly, begin to move away from it, and create action plans, and, start to, answer our inner calling, and be true to that voice, instead of feel like this is all we've got and we have no choice. And I don't submit to that. I lived on the road for a long time. I lived off the grid for a long time, but I'm not going to be able to reach people if I'm not here. So I'm learning, just like everybody else, how to be, immersed in this crap, and still, be effective and healthy and balanced, and strong in what I know we are capable of achieving, and not to, ever lose that. And that consistency and devotion is as solid as anything in me. And at this point, nothing can take it away. And I just, hope people can, feel that as well, because when we're that solid, then nothing can interfere with our creative channels. Nothing can get in there. No programming, and no assault, no attack. And then our auras continue to build in strength, and we find that, we can be like the eye of the hurricane and not get yanked into the cyclone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes a whole lot of sense. And it can be tough for some to balance. I've had people ask me, how do you sleep at night? With all the different things we cover, we have guests who have really opened our eyes to a lot of different things. And for me, I've just learned that when I turn all this off in this studio at night, and I go with my family and do those things, I don't forget it, but I don't let it, run my life. I don't let it run my day. I do what I do, and then I take care of me. I have to. Before any of this, I did harm my health a little, I think, with some of this, because I made it top priority. And it's like, you're not going to wake up people who don't want to wake up. And that's all there is to it. They might open an eye and then they yell at you because they just want to be left alone and stay under their covers. And so, I'm not going to stress myself out. And the way I know that there's something after this. And so, I'm not afraid to die. I don't want to die right now, but I'm not afraid to die. And it is an interesting time to be alive in, and you just never know what's coming next. Here, it never ends.
You really don't know, and this is why it's so important when we think of unity. We can kind of like scoff at some of these words like ascension and unity consciousness or Christ Sophia, and just think, oh, that's all New Age crap. But, I think the New Age distortions have to do with, us expecting that something else is going to do it, and that we are, ascending, but, we don't really need to do anything but just, welcome it in. And then people sit around waiting and waiting and waiting and saying, nothing happened on December 21st, nothing's happening, and people don't feel very encouraged. And so when you participate, when you step up to the plate, though, that's when you see the real results. Just like when we want to have health and well-being, when we drop our addictions, when we start to eat well, we start to see results. And the most important thing, I think, is to not let these attacks or these frequency manipulations, undo us in our relationship with ourselves and our loved ones and our friends, because that is the weak point that, they want to see. I mean, if it was enough to just spray us and, use these dark technologies, they wouldn't bother with all the programmings and distortions in the news and in, the way the masculine and feminine is portrayed, and, where these imbalances have been. I mean, you really have to buy into the programming to have the rest of it take hold. But if we step away from it and we start to recognize the importance of balancing our masculine and feminine and understanding that it's a dance and not a power struggle, and if we really treat each other with mutual love and respect and we walk a path of integrity, in a sense, I mean, that is helping us to keep our chakras clear. It helps us to, build a stronger protection, because when those things are solid, it's very difficult for anything to sneak in. But if we're, fighting and arguing and not treating each other very well, then it is so easy for us to be preyed upon and to be stuck in that loop. So we just have to kind of pull ourselves out and remember what the priorities are. And that is going to be our protection. And that's going to help us to raise our vibration and move into these higher earth energies, which will then influence and shift this toxic environment we're in. Yeah. And we have to be the ones that shift it by taking the initiative. Because if we look around and wait for everything to be okay, to give us permission to feel at peace, we're never going to get there. We have to just say, hey, let's just own it. Let's do it. And just like you said, let's not burn ourselves out trying to wake everybody up. We have to, also, make sure that we're taking care of our needs. And, because, we are a part of this shift, and we have to have an optimal vibration for it to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. As many of us as possible need to come together. People have been distracted so much by mainstream media. Obviously is a huge tool, but then you've got, they've infiltrated alternative media as well now. They're not stupid. They know that people have been turning off Fox News and CNN, and they've been heading to the internet for their news. So they're not stupid. They're there too. So people need to use some common sense, and don't write nothing off, and don't say anything's true until you can prove it. And for me, it's just like, I've had guests who say, well, no, I don't have proof, but I know I could feel that they believe what they're telling me, and if they really believe it, okay, then, it's worth listening to and it's worth considering. So, there's a lot going on. Now, the Mars thing, I wanted to ask you about that. I'm curious. They're talking about sending people to Mars in 2025. Does that have anything at all to do with your being approached years ago?
Well, I think, when we make decisions and choices, it's going to affect everything in the way that things are unfolding. I mean, I think a lot of us have had to sort of dismantle or jump off of a lot of timelines that aren't really representative of our truth, or, where we'd like to go as far as, our future. And I mean, the Mars timeline, if I did go along with it, I think, things would be very different. And I mean, if people like Andrew Bashago weren't speaking up, or Randy Kramers, or, a lot of the people that are real experiencers, I mean, the secrecy would have, persisted. And that persistence of secrecy related to Mars, we can relate to, how our negative ego is. I mean, Mars connects to our solar plexus, and here we've got these Venus transits. And I think the end result that we're wanting to see, that our higher self is aware of, is that, the ego and the heart need to become one. So I looked at this as an opportunity for me to initiate that by connecting with the Venus transits and walking this path related to, Gaia and Sophia and the divine feminine, with the goal and intention of being in balance with the masculine, to, expose this Mars energy, to bust the negative ego, so that, we can think again and ask ourselves, how are we running our energy in this world? How are we using our power? And we're either being duped, and we're sort of in this disempowerment, which is related to Mars in the solar plexus, or we're in this false sense of empowerment based on, being rewarded in a system that rewards us as long as we go along with the program. And so underneath all that is this hidden agenda, these hidden agendas, this secret space program. And to turn it and flip it upside, to turn it upright, or, kind of like a rock with a bunch of bugs underneath, you turn the rock over and it's like, oh, look what's under there. Then we all kind of like, it triggers something in us to maybe, look at ourselves, because we're connected to everything. And so with it being about, okay, people going to Mars and where it all stands right now after a lot of exposure has happened, I really think it's a false flag. Because if you think about it, if people are going to Google Mars and all of a sudden they're going to a Mars reality show and they're seeing that, oh, people are going to go there, it's similar to what NASA does with, the space program. That's the surface space program that covers up or doesn't allow us to see this other stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And this is what most news is all about, and everything on the surface in mainstream culture, it's hiding something much deeper. And I think, whatever about whoever's going to go to Mars or whatever contest there is, I think it's a lot of BS. But if it is real, I'm just getting that it's not, so it's hard for me to even talk about it, because
right.
when you think about it, it's like, what, are they going to have their cameras there and it's like some reality show?
Well,
and
that's
but are they talking about the ETs? Are they talking about the galactic wars? Are they talking about how the life was wiped off on Mars? Are they talking about the history? Are they talking about teleportation and time travel? Are they talking about like all the stuff that other people could be getting in touch with if they Google Mars and actually find out, from experiencers and whistleblowers? It's like, no, they're going to be watching some stupid reality show on some movie set of what, is looking like Mars. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. If any of it is legit, though, and they end up going to these Mars colonies that are already there for, those that are hoarding these technologies, then, it's making us think that, this is like some huge breakthrough. Oh, we landed on the moon, now we're on Mars. And we're sort of being led astray because we're not dealing with the issues at hand. That there's dark technologies, there's a lot of mind control agendas that are out there that are basically concentrated in these power structures and fed through the nervous system of our culture. And it's an infection. And the thing is, we're carriers of the infection, or we're carriers of the energy that resolves the infection and begins to heal it. And if we are unconscious, or we're going along with something that's artificial, then it's like we're being drugged. It's like taking a pharmaceutical, and we're not dealing with the root issue. And so getting to the truth allows us to get to the energies that can transform the nature of everything. And so that's why, we're all, as loud as we can, getting this information out, because we want to help usher souls into the new paradigm. And to me, it's not about where I'm going to end up. I don't really, I'm not afraid of death like you. And I know I'm always going to wake up somewhere. I know I'm on a journey. Right. But, I have a mission here, and I'm determined to do my best with it. But, if humans don't wake up, or the masses don't wake up, I'm not going to let it crush me or defeat me, because I know that, hey, I'm still heading in the direction I'm heading in, just, with those that are ready to go there as well. And hey, we'll leave footprints behind, and, there might be a different way that we address, how we can assist. But, coming along and being humans in this game along with them, and being sort of ignored, and having our information pushed away, and having, the the choice be what the media is presenting while they're still voting for people like Hillary Clinton. It's like, okay, all right, you guys have made your choice, okay? What else could we possibly do? And if that's not enough, I think it's time that, we really do move on, because there's gateways into these higher earth energies. And when the original Atlantis and Lemuria sank, there was a lot of damage to being able to access these higher earth energies, and they've been repaired. And that's what this window period's about. And, our DNA is linked to the stargates on Earth, and our ability to move into these higher earth energies is dependent on our ability to expand in our multidimensional bodies. We can't experience something if we haven't first located it within us. So we have to really just find, reassurance with that, because what we discover and embody, what we discover on the inside and what we bring to the surface of our being, that becomes a creative power. I mean, we're advanced technology. We're like free energy technology, and we either allow it to be siphoned and used against us as a weapon, or we harness it and we use it and we recognize that we're dream reality machines. We can dream and generate whatever we want into our environment. We just have to watch out for these hooks and these traps. And every morning we wake up, we're challenged. But the more we unify, the stronger our shields are going to be, and the more we're going to send out a vibration that takes down these agendas, because they function from what we give to it. They wouldn't be there if we weren't, in a sense, in agreement to it or giving our power to it.
Well, my thoughts, I was thinking that they were going to use this little reality show thing to, because I figured they already got people there on Mars, and that they were going to just try to, blow it off like they sent people there, but they've already been there all along. But I don't know. I do believe there's bases. One thing I do know is that there are different types of monuments and artifacts that some really reliable people have shown me pictures, and they've picked this stuff out, and it's not like, well, it could be a pyramid. It is a pyramid. And so, if it truly is on Mars, that's incredible. That means that, I wonder, has this control that we're under, this slavery that each and every one of us are pretty much under here on this planet, did it start, did it gradually grow, or has it always been in motion since the beginning?
Well, it's hard. When we say the beginning is a long time ago. There was stuff before the Big Bang. Creation has
right.
been. But in this particular system, I would say, when Andromeda and Milky Way were one, Atlantis and Lemuria were like an extension of the Godhead. Like the right and left brain, the masculine and feminine, and life was seated in this multidimensional time matrix, as sort of an extension of the creator. But when you get free will and you have certain archetypal energies or deities that are leading, angelic lines into digression, and hybridization starts to happen, and it starts to pull people away, then an imbalance ends up happening, and that is what led to our sinking into this lower density. And so, we see the same thing in our daily lives. If we're out of balance, our experiences are on a much lower level. If we're in balance, we're functioning, with energies of magic and miracles. I would say that, okay, there's definitely colonies on Mars. So when I'm talking about the reality show, I'm just saying that they could fake something, to get our attention off of what's really happening on Mars. There's definitely colonies there. There's definitely ruins. But are these people actually going to go to Mars, is the thing. And it's only going to expose so much of, what we're capable of, because they've been using technologies and all sorts of things for a really long time. We need to actually heal our relationship with Mars, because when Maldek exploded and wiped the life off of Mars and these souls started to incarnate here, a lot of these agendas related more to negative ego and service to self ended up, really kind of creating the control system and these monarchies and these governments, but with this shadow Illuminati, deeply embedded, under the surface, like hiding behind the curtain. When we look at the outer facade, is very different, than the inner workings of how to create that facade. And technologies were put in place 26,000 years ago the Nephilim reversal grid was put under Stonehenge to affect the ley lines so that it would be very difficult for us to advance our DNA and to ascend with the planet. Because the whole idea is after we sank in density, that immediately this planet was seeded as an ascension planet so that we could progress over the course of time and grow as souls and have the ability to choose, if we are going to be on a path that allows us to connect with what we're truly made of and what our origins are, or if we're going to allow these lower creator forces and these control systems to dictate our reality to us and enslave us.
Well,
and so, yeah, we're enslaved, but again, we're not. We're enslaved every time we make a choice to be enslaved.
True.
But we're sovereign beings every time we choose ourselves and we choose the higher road, I guess you could say. And it's easy to be rebellious and to look at all this, and say, I don't quite understand. Like, I think it's easy to just see, this is BS. What more do people need? There's pedophilia. There's satanic ritual abuse. There's people talking about it that have gone through it. There's witnesses. There's more evidence that could be used in a courtroom to hold all these people accountable than what we see in most courtrooms. But, people want to stay in this prison. I look at it like we're born into captivity, like we're zoo animals.
Yeah.
And those that have the key, they're like, I don't want to go back out there. And we're like, well, it's your natural habitat. And they're like, I'm not familiar enough with it. And it depends on when that soul was seeded, into this human experience. Some of us are ancient souls and we are much more comfortable in our natural habitat. And some, were seeded right into the matrix and they don't really know what that other place is. It's a dormant potential that's in their DNA, but they do need help, in order to activate it, because these digressed races and these fallen angelics did a lot with our genetics and did a lot with DNA, and the souls that were, birthing into those bodies didn't really have a reference point or anything to contrast it with. And so those are the hard ones, to wake up. But everybody, doing astrology, and doing readings for people, you can see where particular life events are on that person's path specifically to wake them up. And everybody, is at different phases of their soul growth, but the ones that get stuck, they're either a part of, the manipulation where they're being programmed to think that they're, doing something good for the planet, and they don't realize that, it is, a very negative thing, the patriotic programming that, allowed a lot of people to choose to serve this Mars agenda, are very well-intentioned people that really don't have any idea that, it's moving us into a catastrophic timeline, and that's what the game of compartmentalism does.
Well,
it makes it very hard to look at the big picture of what's really being done to us.
Maybe these people aren't really going to be sent to Mars, but maybe they don't know it. Maybe they're going to be sent to, say, the space station or to the moon and be intercepted. And, all right, E.T., here's the trade-off. Here's all your people, and thank you for the technology.
Right. And the thing is, because we're dealing with infiltrations and infections and, even an agenda that might have started off as a good idea, can be taken over. The Templars and all sorts of, the Masons, it's like not all of these things were always negative, and certainly not every ET race, is all negative. There's just as much diversity, I think, in an ET race as there is in the human race as far as, the intentions of what that being is, unless they are a part of maybe a hive mind or an artificial intelligence system where they can't think for themselves. And yeah, we have no idea. And so this is why I didn't go to Mars. Why would I want somebody else to decide for me and to guide my energies into something that, is a big mystery to me? This whole journey for me is about sovereignty, being empowered, having my own creative freedom, and creating my own future and writing the script for myself and encouraging other people to do it, and honoring and serving Gaia, and paying attention to what's going on in the cosmos and learning as much as I possibly can. If I go off, and went with what they said, oh, we'll protect you and you're going to be given this big role, it's like, yeah, right, why should we be so trusting? And it's not about being shut down and not trusting anybody, but maybe that's not really where it's at. I don't think that's safe. I think we need to trust ourselves. We need to trust nature. We need to trust, other things, and keep everything at arm's length until you feel, beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's on your team. And so I didn't have enough indication that these people were on my team, so there was no way. But I do think that the Mars agenda started off, with the idea of protecting the human genome and certain DNA, in the chance, that there might have been a catastrophe. But it got infiltrated, and now it's more about simulating these catastrophes through things like HARP, creating superstorms and creating epidemics, and it's a false version of it.
Well, I think most of these projects start off with good intentions. That road to hell is paved with good intentions, and what happens is, the military complex sits back. So let's see what they could do with it. Oh wow, they can control the weather now. No, we're gonna dismantle that, and then they take it over.
Right, and it's kind of like, they study us. They are able to observe what it means to be human, and they understand what our potential is, and it scares them. It really, truly scares them. And with their technologies, particularly, back when I was dealing with the Mars stuff, hearing about looking glass technologies, they're able to go into the past, they're able to look into the future, but the one thing that I always heard and recognized that always caught my attention was they can't read anything past 2012. And so they're creating these timelines and agendas without really knowing, what's going to happen. So why would we want to go along with something when there's sort of this zone of, being able to decide what train we're wanting to jump on during this time? And when we, are empowered to choose for ourselves, then we're responsible for our own creations, and we're not locked into, the karmic mess of having to come here again and create resolution, or to, attempt to try and break free again, or, where we give our power away and we have to be a part of, what they are needing to face in order to, be redeemed. But many, certainly aren't going to go down that path. But the well-intentioned souls that got caught up in those agendas or in those deals, maybe, because it appealed to their greed instinct at the time, or their desire for power, want to turn that all around. That's a lot to pull yourself out of. So 2012 is a really, this whole window period, the year 2000 to 2017, this whole stellar activation cycle is a chance to harness our creative powers and, like make it happen for ourselves. And, even the Aztec calendar, when I was in my early 20s, I went to Mexico City and I'm sitting next to the tour guide. I wasn't with the tour, and he's talking about the fifth sun. They don't know what's going to happen after that. And again, it's like we're moving into this fifth world, or this new world, and this 2012 window period where it's sort of like a big unknown. But that's really when, the ability for us to raise our frequency and our consciousness to the 0 point energy is not detectable by technology, because the frequency is beyond what technology can track, because it's in that sort of like zone of, you can't really read that because it's not really accessible by technology. These technologies are running on a much lower level, and the programmings come from these dimensions that are not in that 0 point energy. And so they've altered the calendars. They took the 13th sign out. They make the number 13 so taboo in order to throw us off a little bit, so that we're not connecting with the potential of this window period. And that's the danger right now, is that we'll miss the mark and we'll be too distracted, or we'll be following, the systems that they put in place that have a patriarchal slant to it and are not in balance with nature. So we have to say, like, okay, let's step out of all that. And, nobody's destroyed what's organic. We can connect to it any time. Okay, yes, the elements are poisoned in this and that, but the power of regeneration and the power of what Spirit's capable of doing, can rehabilitate and restore and regenerate pretty much anything. So we have to get in alignment with those forces in order for our health and well-being to thrive, so that we also send out the energy to clean the elements, because the earth responds to us. And as long as we're in negative ego, we're part of the toxicity. As soon as we're connecting to the power of Spirit and the regenerative power of nature, and what the shift time really means, as far as, moving into the zone of where Spirit holds dominion over matter, because we are easily activated right now, with getting our DNA upgraded and everything, then our vision and dream influences creation, and we can really clean things up. We can clean things up with psychic focusing. We can focus energies, with our psychic minds, and shift things just as much as, how we can be effective, stepping in and trying to create justice. But we have to do both. If we try and solve 3D problems, in the 3D way, and we don't step into these higher dimensions to solve them, then we're not really working with our greater powers. We're, really just in a heavy battle, and it tires us and it drains us and it depresses us and it's frustrating. We got to turn these abilities on because they're going to activate people, and it's contagious. Just like this infection's contagious, well, so is the immune system, and when more people align with it, miracles happen, I mean, disease gets healed, cancers get healed, when the immune system is functioning at an optimal level. So none of this is, irreversible, but, we have to decide, which side we're playing on. And we're either, exacerbating the infection, or we are, really, forming a healing response, creating a healing response. And I wrote a post the other day about, the scar that's going to be left behind, and how scar tissue is stronger than the original skin. And that's something we'll always carry with us, this incredible strength of coming into this experience and doing this. It's like, man, we're going to be able to handle anything from this point forward.
Yeah.
But
after this, there'll be a lot of scar tissue. But Laura, hang on for a moment. We got to take a break here, and then we'll come back and talk some more. I want to talk a little more about the time travel aspect when we come back, just a little bit, because when I think about it, they have the technology for time travel. Then that means that they could go back as far back as we can probably think of or imagine, and manipulate everything from there on up. So just really interesting to think about. So hang on with us, everybody.
But I mean, one has to question, some of this alien technology. They're able to simulate environments and create sort of a maybe a false version of reality. We just don't really know. I mean, what I feel is, we're dealing with a time matrix. You can time travel within that matrix, but then there's something that is sort of beyond this time matrix that I don't feel they can necessarily access. I think when you're dealing with the way, it's all been set up with the technologies that were put in place, like the Nephilim reversal grid, and, just the way that the stargates used to be used, back in our ancient history, and we used to come and go, with great ease. They were able to sort of project in front of themselves into the future, certain things. And when we got to certain, points, they were able to also go back and then sort of rewrite it in the way that they want it to be written. So if you have these competing timelines, it's almost like, wires, or that for a period of time we're all kind of entangled, and I just feel we're multidimensional beings, and we there's parallel worlds in the universe. I mean, who's to say what the ultimate truth is, in that a particular timeline is the way it was, and that's the only truth that there is. I mean, if we can see parallel realities or potentials in future timelines, then I'm feeling like there are potential timelines connected to the past that aren't just one scenario. And I feel that a lot of the manipulation comes down to where they find this entanglement of energies, and try and create a story, and then as the wires, I guess you could say, start to narrow, in this window period that we're in, and there's not so many. It's coming down to it's either the artificial one. There's 3 timelines in this particular juncture. At least that's what people like Dan Bursch were saying, compared to a ton, in the last 26,000 years that we could have chosen from. I feel like they're trying to present something based on, a lot of, different potentials, and what story do they want? And they're working on writing a script to represent that. And then when they have people that are witnessing it through maybe chronovision or time travel, I'm not feeling that they're seeing legitimate realities, because I've worked with a lot of psychics and mediums, and I went to a clairvoyant institute, and what we saw with the Life of Christ is very different than what Andrew Bashago saw. What we see in the books, in the history books connected to, wartime, is very different than what I have learned, actually happened. And so with Project Paperclip and a lot of these technologies and the mind control project moving into the United States, we start to see the propaganda changing. All of a sudden, the Holocaust never happened, they're saying, or, Eisenhower's the war criminal. And it's like, okay, well, if we were to time travel, would we be able to see it? And are those clones? Is it a simulated reality? Or, are they able to construct something that they sort of came up with to serve their agenda? I mean, we just don't know. These are highly advanced technologies. And when you time travel, I mean, are you really immersed in that reality? I mean, so all these questions, I think, need to be looked at. And when we listen to people like Andrew and people who have experienced this, I mean, even he, considers some of these things. I mean, the chronovisors that they looked at, to look at the future, had a lot to do with the nature of the person that was looking at them. A lot more than them being an actual solidified reality. And so if you're dealing with, particular species of ETs and their collaborations with the Illuminati, if they want a particular agenda to succeed, they're going to cover all their bases so that it's embedded in what our children are learning. I mean, children are drawing pictures of chemtrails like they're real clouds. Kids are going to start to pick up on the new propaganda if it starts to make its way into history books, if they succeed in completely rewriting history to suit them. And so I'm not here to be biased. If something happened in World War II that was wrong of Eisenhower to do, hey, I'll speak about it. But something doesn't feel right. And so I have been working with people, mediums that said what they've been presenting and what the propaganda is not what they're seeing, and it isn't what happened. So, I think it's a big clusterfuck, to tell you the truth.
Laura, we've got a call. We've got 917 area code. You're on Late Night in the Midlands. First name, where you're calling from, please.
Hey, Laura, it's Kelly calling from Santa Monica. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Long time no talk.
Then it's Kelly that I know. That's awesome. Hi, Kelly.
I just had a question regarding genetics. Like, I've been feeling lately, as you know, I've done a lot of work to heal and, stay on the light side. But recently I've been doing a treatment. I've been doing a lot of things to help with my depression and to stay drug-free and keep moving towards the light. And one of the things that came up with like the fibromyalgia and the chronic fatigue and that kind of syndrome of a lot of people that are struggling with the environment and feeling that overload of processing all of these energies is I've been doing these nano oxygenization baths, which are really, really intense. And I feel when I get into them, there's a part of me that really wants to be there, and then there's a part of me that can't tolerate it. And I'm feeling like it's this hybridized negative aspect of myself that's actually a part of my genetic coding. Like, that's been feeling like in the last week or so. And I don't know how to divest myself of that aspect. It feels really weird. Like, I feel like the angelic human part of me loves being in the oxygenated bath, and then the alien hybrid part is like, get me out of here. And because I've always had about the chemtrails, like they want to make a less oxygenated environment. And I don't know, it's like I have this really, really intense conflict that's become physicalized now with this treatment. And I'm just wondering what your idea is about how to, like, if you feel like you have this kind of genetics that are not necessarily all love and light, how do you integrate that towards the light?
Well, I almost look at, like, bloodlines and just ancestral lines, almost like DNA strands, and certain lines of energy have been damaged, almost like, what we inherit is DNA damage. And as a collective and as a whole, we're dealing with, a lot of damage and there's a lot of repair work. But the original DNA, I don't feel is where the issue is. I feel it's where the implants are, ethereal implants and implants that, get into, our systems that, keep things, looping into, like, refeeding, the damage, and it shows up in behavior patterns. It shows up in just the way we interact with our life. Because if we're going to understand our DNA, we have to see, what are our beliefs? What is the health of our emotional, physical, mental bodies? Because, like, for example, if we inherit heart disease, are we really inheriting heart disease? Or are we instead inheriting a behavior pattern of stress and being high strung and being nervous. And so I think we need to just really look at, ourselves and look at the behaviors, that we slip into. Do we have a tendency towards addiction? Are we aroused to anger easily? Do we have chronic anxiety? And, begin to look at it. And also, look at where we might get implant removals. And the thing is it goes back to just our creative energy operating from instructions that aren't true to who we really are. And we have our deep soul energies and our deep soul journey that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with DNA until it lands in a meat suit that has, a certain, genetic coding. But then there's junk DNA, which goes into our ethereal bodies and our multidimensional bodies. And when we start to move into our multidimensional bodies, we can start to influence the damaged genetics that are in the physical. And because we can wander outside of the parameters of physicality and we can work with our consciousness, we can actually repair our DNA by consciously changing some of those things that we might see as, okay, that's a behavior pattern that I definitely inherited, or, my mom was like this, or, it seems to be an ancestral thing. So, on a more poetic, sort of less technical level, we can look at, how we can adjust our behavior patterns to begin to recode the DNA and to begin to heal the distortions, to override it. It's called like an override frequency. And we can, look at and see if we have, implants. And then, we can do things like, plant medicines, and go on journeys, that help us to step outside of the game for a little bit and kind of, reassess everything and say, okay, this is where the energy needs to be adjusted, because energy happens before physicality, and same with thought forms. So if we can get behind the scenes of ourselves a little bit and turn a few knobs, when we get into the physical and we wake up in the morning, we're starting to change the programming in our physical body based on damaged DNA, based on implants, and based on hybridizations, where we're carrying maybe the intention of some ET race and some agenda connected to it that wants us to avoid our own healing. And I think when the soul and the consciousness take the helm, we're able to get back to the divine blueprint and begin to do all sorts of incredible stuff to, our DNA, and it'll change our physicality. I mean, and if we're locked in a meat suit where we can't do a whole lot, I think we just have to be that much more diligent, but I don't believe that. And my belief system is not just from, oh, that's a fluffy philosophy. I mean, I've seen myself change my physicality and my DNA and some of the damage that I inherited, I've healed my heart. I used to always think I was going to have a heart attack. Now I don't have chest pains anymore. I used to have them every day because I stepped out of all of it and I said, okay, I've inherited, high level stress. I've taken on probably more than I can handle, like Eisenhower did, or I don't know. I'm not trying to compare myself to him, but, like what can I look at, and if there is some sort of, alien interference, then I'm in a bit of a inward battle with myself, but I get to decide who I want to win. And I'll keep at it until, I, show myself and whatever that energy is who's in the driver's seat. Because it's the same thing with archetypes in the tarot deck, and all these different things where we can associate with a damaged sort of like distortion of our mental body that we might see in a card, but we can also integrate it into an energy that's much greater and higher where it almost dissolves into it. So these archetypes also represent DNA, and there's fragments of us that we operate from, and we lose touch with our greater self. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was literally, I just listened to Lisa Renee's podcast for April, Single Soul Occupancy, and I've had a couple of friends who have had like exorcisms lately, where they've like had, like in this most recent phase, have been like expiating like really intense entities out of their physical body. And that's what I feel like when I go to do light work. Like I've been doing space clearings. I've been working in, moving, clearing space. Like I'm doing the light work, but I feel like my body is like, there's like so much internal opposition to doing anything towards self-care, or it's just crazy. It's like I'm got the, and it's like beyond addiction at this point. Like it's just so, it's just really, yeah. I
totally get it. Yes. I have self-destructive tendencies that I have to counteract. I don't know quite where it comes from. It's probably where something got in a weak time in my life and just sort of, I don't know, did something that makes it very easy to just want to self-destruct. And I've been having to push through that energy my whole life. And, And I have to consciously work on it all the time, because if I were to just kind of let myself naturally go in the direction that my physical body would want to go in, it just there's something in there that just wants to self-destruct. Maybe it just because I don't want to be here, or it's something so that I fail on my mission. And so I always have to step out and just take a deep breath, and also like don't be too hard on yourself. It's like the thing is your greater self, your multidimensional body with all these dimensions that you have access to, can oversee this. And as long as you link up with the voice or the energetic that is the best for you and the healthiest, and you devote yourself to being able to hear that voice out of all other voices, your physical body is going to start to be reprogrammed, because you keep choosing, that part of you instead of these other parts of you. And we have to allow our fragments and our damaged self to be willing to listen to our wisdom body. But when we're in our damaged self, we forget about our wisdom body, and we have to just say, okay, wait a second. Let's invite all of these parts of ourselves into, the room, and let these other parts of ourselves, counsel it and transmute it and invite it in and integrate it back into wholeness. And that's exactly what the Tarot and Zodiac teaches us with, all these minor arcanas. It's like, they're fragmented parts of who we are. And when we find balance and wholeness, they're not running the show. We're not allowing a fragmented part of us to dictate to us how we're going to run our bodies, but we have to push ourselves. We have to push ourselves, to connect with that right part of who we are. And then we start to attract synchronicities, and our life starts to provide us the medicine we need. We start to meet people that, give us the clues that we need to move in a direction that really serves us. And you're totally doing it, but there is that little trap. And,
yeah, that's what I think too, and that's why I just was wondering your gut feeling about what I'm saying about these nano-oxygenized baths. If you think that I'm onto something that's like expiating some sort of implantation or energetic that's been holding me back, because I literally feel like the Wicked Witch, and like I start having trouble breathing. I'm like, no, get me out, and then the part of me is like, stay in the bath, stay in the bath. It's like a half-hour treatment, so. And then it like just kind of wipes me for like 12 hours. But anyway, it's just...
Yeah, I think it sounds good. I think maybe baby steps too, don't push yourself to, have it all happen like too quickly, and it's just kind of like you'll always make progress when you just show up, and just keep showing up, and when it's too much, step back a little bit and then kind of go into a zone maybe and ask, okay, why was it too much? What was the trigger? What came up? What was the energy behind that? What was the belief behind it? What was it feeding into? What was it saying to you? And isolate it and write it down on a piece of paper and begin to work with, changing your relationship with that energy. And then when you go back in, you might find, okay, wow, it's a lot easier this time around, and it's just being really meticulous, and very just, like get in the meticulousness of it, do it in kind of baby steps, but make sure that you're, really paying attention to what that trigger is, and get to know it. When I get a destructive trigger, that's just me not loving myself enough, or I'm just falling into just, an old wound, where maybe I wasn't supported along the way. And, and I'm just using it as an example. I'm not saying that this is my process, but I isolate it, I look at it, I work with it. And then when I hit that same energy, it's actually like I have a better grip on it than before. Because I'm becoming more personalized with it, and I'm not judging it. I'm loving it. I'm loving those parts of myself that, don't maybe want me to succeed because somebody else threw a projection of fear about what that represented, or feeling threatened by it, maybe just the whole Mars agenda and what they were throwing at me, when I started to walk away from it, so our wounds and our afflictions are actually great tools. They help us so much. We just have to be willing to go through the portal, because really it's just reminding us that we're homesick, or else we wouldn't be in this struggle. And so your struggle is actually a beautiful one, but allow it to like make you feel good, like, oh, I'm just homesick, instead of, you have the side of yourself that doesn't want you to heal. It's more, you're inviting these parts of yourself back that you've been longing for, that, will invite these fragmented aspects home again.
All right, and Michelle, thank you so much for your call. We've got some other calls, so I want to move along here. We've got 267 area code. You've been waiting for a few minutes. Welcome aboard.
Good evening, Laura. It's Jay Parker.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, I just wanted to say great job at Free Your Mind Free.
Thank you so much.
As usual. And when you're talking about, you're right on in what you're saying, okay? If we're going to transmute and change the energy of this planet, we're going to have to face our shadows. We're going to have to look at the darkness. We're going to have to pull ourselves into reality. And nobody can do that for you but you. You got to do the work,
Yes.
But I must say, one of the things, because I am a trauma abuse monarch, I went through the CIA monarch program. The only thing that helped me recover from the programming was subconscious reprogramming that I did with EFT. And also Dr. Bruce Lifton talks about Psyche as another subconscious reprogrammer. Because as we interact with the field, it's 4 million bits of information transferred a second in the conscious mind, but it's 400 million in the subconscious mind. And so people get their subconscious in the first 6 years of life when they're a hypnagogic trance. And so society, your parents, religion, all the TV you watch as a toddler, that all gets flooded into your subconscious and becomes the main processor of your mind. But it's not, of course, your consciousness. It's more like the hard drive to the computer for walking around in this reality. And we need to go in there and take the trash out, because that subconscious mind that was given to us by our society and our parents was not something we chose. There are brainwashing, literally, mental commands in our subconscious which are overriding our conscious mind because of the 100 million to 1 difference in the power of it, relating to the field. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I'm so glad you called in and are sharing this. It's really perfect after
Well,
our
I'm
last
telling
call.
you, as a monarch that was mind controlled to be a zombie, okay, and a slave, I can't tell anyone who's doing this work, following your advice, okay, doing that light work, get some EFT, start writing out your traumas, start writing out the habit patterns you don't like, and start tapping on them with the new energy psychologies of EFT, Psyche, and tap and breathe. And I know it works, and I'm just telling people, get into the subconscious, listen to Bruce Lipton, he'll explain it to you, a lot of videos on YouTube, and just wanted to, put my 2 cents in on this important discussion about how we're going to clean up the morphogenic field and start broadcasting a new vibration.
Oh, it's so great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your call. Very interesting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, have a great night, my friend. And Laura, we've got one more we're going to hit here before we take our next break. That's David. And David, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands. How are you today?
Good evening, Michael. Evening, Laura. This is David Koss from Facebook.
Hey there.
How are you, dear?
I'm good. How are you?
I was wondering, because I asked this question of different people, I've asked it before, how do you think we are going to get to the peaceful status here on this planet that's portrayed in Star Trek that I viewed in 1963, 64? Or do you think that the portrayal of George Lucas's Star Wars is still going on at this moment and will continue for some time into the far future?
I almost feel like everything's happening all at once, and our vibration, our frequency, and just where we are in our soul development determines where we are in this sort of like larger picture where, all this different stuff is going on simultaneously almost. I mean, in this human body experience, we have time and everything, but I think we just have to really recognize that, we're not at the mercy of anything that we're surrounded by. We have great power and influence. And I mean, I'm certainly not going to stop as long as I'm here. And I only have visions of everything working out. I mean, I think it's a huge breakthrough that James Casbolt revealed, you know, that the elite want our understanding, and I know they're not really the elite. And, you know, basically they need to feed on human flesh. Now, it doesn't make it okay, but the fact that this dialogue is starting to happen is, you know, a bit of a breakthrough, I would say. And so once the cat's out of the bag and there's sort of a reaction to it, you know, and people start to see it, it's similar to just any bit of news that a person gets that triggers, you know, an incredible, like, shift. You know, like I use the example of, you know, having a partner cheating on you. The minute you find out, everything changes, you know, but as long as you're being duped, you're going to sort of be there and maybe be suspicious. And so I think everything is coming out that needs to come out, and people are going to make a decision about, you know, what needs to be done. And the internal callings that are deep within people are going to get highly activated, and we have no choice but to unify. And if we're going to hold these people accountable, you know, we have to look at it on an energetic level of how that's possible. Like I said, if we're doing it if we're in battle mode, it's not going to be that easy. But if we look at it like, you know, we're embodying the peace, we're embodying the unification and the leadership in the world, which is making them like be purged and exposed, kind of like a splinter, like popping out, kind of like, here's the problem that was wedged in there this whole time. Now it can't survive in that space anymore because the energy is not allowing it to be there anymore, you know, which is how disease heals. When our immune system is built, our disease heals, then all these things are going to be sitting on the outside, you know, wanting to run for cover, but they won't be able to because they're not embedded in the body anymore. They're not getting away with something in secrecy. And so I think that that's the key to our peace, is to continue to work our energy and have our focused intentions and do things in the physical to promote, you know, justice and to build a new system and a new paradigm, you know, joining forces.
I agree with you completely. And I've been under this impression for the last 30 years that times are going to get worse and bad things are going to happen, but they're all designed by the creators to bring us all up to snuff on exactly what's going on, intergalactically speaking. Like I say, in order to get us to the Star Trek phase of the human existence, where people are nice to each other and caring and thoughtful, but we are then going out in the universe to, you know, discover new worlds and new civilizations. But you know, like you were saying, at the moment, I think a lot less needs to be broadcast and played upon as far as the negatives. What we need now is to focus on the positive timelines and the positive events that could happen if we all start to think together and unite our efforts towards that common goal of peace and prosperity rather than lies and deceptions.
Exactly. It's like, you know, once you find out that you've been, you know, cheated on, I'm sorry, I keep using the example, you know, you don't sit around and hang out with your ex and right. or you keep reliving the story over and over again and sharing it. It then becomes like a low energy of, like, you know, being victimized and not being able to emerge. It's like, you know, let this be an opportunity to say, okay, I get it. Read enough conspiracy stuff. All right, let's move on. You know, now we know what we need to do. Let's not dwell. Let's move on to the next level, you know, and we are going to go back to the stars. We're star beings, you know, but we can't do it, you know, under the control and direction of the military-industrial complex or any of these imbalanced systems, or, you know, where, you know, it's done in secrecy, where the human race, you know, is not a part of it, or they're getting a theater or a theatrical version of it that's not really authentic. And so, you know, we've done what we need to do to get everything kind of out there. Now everybody gets to decide, what are you going to do with it? And we can't control what people are going to choose to do with it. But when we walk, you know, towards the destination that matters most to us, our world is going to start to reflect that back to us. Now, we made agreements to come into this body, so there are limitations connected to it, but they're not as limiting as we think, not in these times. And, you know, we are not trapped. We're not enslaved unless, you know, we allow ourselves to stay behind bars and we don't question any of this. Otherwise, I think, you know, once we wake up, it's like something amazing happens. You know, I remember waking up to something, and the minute I was triggered by something really positive, that had to do with my mission, and I got the validation I needed that made it that much more real, I wasn't bedridden. I mean, I was able to emerge. I got my energy back. Everything started to change and fall into place, because maybe that was just a piece I needed. And so everybody's getting what they need. I mean, life is designed to take care of us, just like our physical body. It's signed. It sounds the red alerts. It gives us adversity and experiences that'll help us to grow. But if we're watching TV, we're not able to assimilate it or process it correctly, and we, miss out on the incredible initiations that are organically placed in front of us, no matter who we are. Well, and that's going to guide us home.
I feel as though sometimes now, since we've all seen the chemtrails over our heads, and we've all had a chance to read about Monsanto and Roundup fertilizer, which has been around for 50 years, and whatever it is. A lot of these negatives are now kind of like flogging a dead horse. What we need to do actually is to focus on the positive timelines and focus on what we can all do to make this world a better place, rather than continue to see it crumble, and
that's what I'm all about.
Right. In doing so, we will change our future, and we will make it a better place. But thank you, Laura. I just wanted to get your feedback on those couple questions.
I love it. Thank you so much. I love what you shared, and it's such a beautiful and important point. I mean, think about doctors, and I know that you probably have to go off the call, but doctors that say you'll never be able to walk again, or times where you felt so sick, and we can bounce back and regenerate. That's the beauty. The mind control is when somebody else tells us what we can or cannot do. And we have to start looking at ourselves and saying, believe in yourself, believe in your power. The infiniteness of our creative imagination is endless. We can tap into anything and make anything real and possible. You just have to be consistent with that vision and stop, allowing yourself to let somebody else dictate for you what you can and cannot do, or what a certain illness is good, what future that holds for you. Get your power back and decide for yourself.
Oh, exactly. Well, negative thoughts or positive thoughts are what make our future. And so that's why I'm so positive about everything I think, say, and do, because I just don't care to waste any time on the negatives.
That's awesome. I like to still point them out just in case, a person's struggling with it, or they're having a hard time moving through it, or somebody still thinks that, everything is fine and they should go vote for Hillary Clinton. But I'm totally right there with you. It's really to me, I just see it in simple terms of stepping up to the plate, activating the immune system, and allowing nature to do its magic, because nature knows exactly how to handle all this and to bring itself back into balance. Even with these technologies trying to control it, it's really us being controlled. And she's showing us this as an outer metaphor. This whole world is metaphorical to help us to see where we need to grow so that we get triggered into positive change. And she's saying, look at what's happening. It's actually happening to you. What are you going to do about it? And we have to, decide that, we're going to choose ourselves, and we're going to choose the higher road, and we're going to live in integrity, and we're going to be smart with how we use our power. And the world, Gaia is okay, and we got to trust that this is part of what she's allowing, for our greater growth and for our ability to get on track.
Oh yeah, life is a lesson and nothing more.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes it's a tough one, but thank you, David.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, I appreciate the call, my friend. Thank you very much. Laura, we're going to take our last break, and then you and I will come back and finish up. And if anybody else wants to call in, they could do so after this break, and we'll take more calls. When we come back, I'd like to hear a little bit about how it all went down when you were approached. What did they say, and how did they react when they were turned down, and what has it been like since? Has there been, any repercussions for not accepting their offer or what have you? And I'd like to get into that just a little when we come back. So hold on with us for a moment, folks. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera. My guest, Laura Magdalene Eisenhower. And a fascinating conversation here tonight. And, folks, you're welcome to get involved. We still got some time, 803-317-2264. Don't forget, folks, the only way this network, this station stays on the air is if you continue to help us donate, subscribe. Either one helps us out, keeps us here. The fact is we feel like the truth will set you free, so we've always made it free. And by doing so, we just ask that you donate or maybe you subscribe to help us out. But we never lock up the information. Like tonight's show, it'll be available for a couple hours after the show tonight. It'll be in the archives. It'll run again at 7 a.m. You'll probably hear this on the Dark Matter Radio Network as well. You'll hear it on K98 Talk. You'll also hear it on High Point Radio. And, of course, I don't need to tell you that they cover 3 different states. And you'll hear it here on Late Night in the Midlands, our own radio station. So, folks, help us out, because what we're doing is we're trying to build a network. We're trying to bring the truth back to talk radio is what we're trying to do. You know, you've heard about all these other different outlets that came along. I mean, some people were just doing like NASCAR racing and stuff, and all of a sudden they said, oh, well, there's people who will believe anything I say, so let me get out there and build this radio show and just suck people dry. We don't do that. What we do is we bring on great guests like Laura, and we let them speak their minds. We don't censor them. We don't do pre-interviews. We basically, it's you want to come on? Yes. All right. I give the guest a call during the show, and they come on live, and none of this is rehearsed. And this is what you get from Late Night in the Midlands, the L&M Radio Network. But we're back, Laura, and we do have another call. But before we take that call, so just be patient with us, callers. Let me ask you this. How did they go about approaching you? I mean, I'm trying to imagine myself being out one day and being approached and hey, do you want to go to Mars? How did that exactly go down, and what did you think?
Well, I mean, it was set up very strategically. I felt a lot of control energy on me my whole life, and it was driving me nuts because I couldn't really create anything. And I'm like, I'm a creative being. Why can't I seem to make anything happen? You know, and I could just feel these energies on me pretty much my whole life. And then it got confirmed, you know, that there was, you know, just some weaponry being used on me, like, and that's why it was very hard to be in my body. But anyway, I just sort of like decided, okay, well, let's see where it takes me, because I can't fight against it anymore, and I'm going to face it head on, whatever it is. And I just, you know, ended up moving back to the Maryland area, the DC area, and I just, you know, raising my kids, and decided I would go, you know, to this thing because I hadn't been out and done any, I hadn't done anything for a long time, and it was this gathering, and it was just kind of like camping, and it was, you know, people bringing instruments, and anyway, this person approached me and was just like wanting to hang out, and it was just, you couldn't be more casual and just sort of normal, just kind of like, okay. But we had a strong connection. We had a strong affinity for each other, and I knew him, you know, from like past lives. And so anyway, we were dating each other because we clearly hit it off, and he was going to secret meetings in DC, and then he would come and visit me. I was living in the basement of my mom's home temporarily, and that's when I started to hear about all this stuff, and he was starting to bring me in, and you know, he's mentioning things like Orion's Cube and Looking Glass technology, and, you know, we need to go to Mars by 2012, and we're going to travel in this thing called an ARC, spelled A-R-C. And I'm just like, okay, I'm thinking that this person was going to do this anyway, and that I just ran into him, and, you know, he's kind of like, all right, we're dating, do you want to come to Mars with me? And it would be easy to just, you know, make a decision and say, sorry, I really don't want to, or and it was a lot more complex than that. Actually, 7 months into the relationship, he finally admitted that they sent him specifically to that gathering to lure me in. And but he was under a lot of control, because he would get phone calls and they would give him like codes over the phone, and he would disappear and not remember. He would tell me things and then take those things back. But I mean, when I was dating him, it was like they were very strategic about how much they were going to share with me. They wanted to wait till like we were living together and things got really a lot more merged before you know, they were really going to get serious about it, because before it was just like I was observing these emails and I was just being brought into it, but it was very hush, 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 hush. And I thought, you know, I could talk him into staying on Earth with me, and we had just such a karmic connection that I just, you know, just thought that there'd be some way that love would win. Yeah. And I guess I found out, well, I suspected this, and then I found out, and then saw a website later that confirmed it. You know, just about this quantum access technology and how they can locate you in past lives. And what I realized is that they were able to see us as a couple and targeted him, brought him into the project. And then when he came, looking for me, of course I was going to feel drawn. I mean, because I'm not just going to fall for some agent. I mean, there has to be like some sort of, something there, right? And so it was very strategic. And then, so it was very difficult because I'm trying to like wake him up to what's happening. I'm like, you're not really in possession of yourself. I'm like, do you not realize what is going on here? I was sensing that he was going, he had a lot of experiences with abductions and getting sort of communications telepathically with an ET race, and I had a feeling it was artificial. I'm like, I don't think this is legit communication, and I'm thinking that the people that he's going to these secret meetings with are behind this. And then I discovered, okay, they're called the Aviary. Folks like John Alexander and others are a part of it, and they are linked to the CIA and MJ-12, and they have cover jobs, but they're also they're involved with other things. They have their hands on the alien technology and stuff, and they're part of implementing this Mars agenda, but they wanted to set it up in a way where it looked like he had this encounter. They're bringing him in. He's telling them about it, and they're kind of, join in with this. But Alternative 3 was established in the Eisenhower administration, and this whole concept has been around for a while. So there was no Project Camelot at the time. I was just having dreams, very prophetic, lucid dreams, that were allowing me to really see what was going on. And even a voice out of the sky told me to make a choice, and I chose my mission. And it's a long story. It would fill up the rest of the show to describe everything that I went through to help me to understand what was going on. But I just kept saying no, and then they would drop it. And like I said, once I was living with him, that's when it got real heavy and serious. And when I said I wasn't going to go, because first of all, I wasn't being listened to, and nobody really wanted to hear about my mission, and there was no real ability to share my input, so it was very controlling. He said, if you don't go, they're going to take you anyway. They're going to kidnap you. Oh. I mean, he used that word, and I was like, why would you use that word? I'm like, I just stayed strong, and I really recognized that, this is a chance for me to really prove that these people have nothing on us, and whether it's archons, whether it's alien technology, whether it's mind control or anything, if we claim our sovereignty and if we're strong and we're true to ourselves, particularly if we, have, a deeper calling and mission, which helps, which we can all locate because we're all, purposed and tasked with a similar thing. There's nothing, that they can do. Of course there's ramifications though. And of course, I don't know, how threatened, my life is, except for the death threats that I get and how often, plants are put in my way. So when I refused to go, I would say the operations got worse as far as setting me up with other traps and scenarios that actually were even more obvious to see through because they weren't as well orchestrated, because it was like plan D, they went through plan A, B, C, D, and now we're at plan G, and it's like there's no way to dupe me or fool me. There were some plants that I fell for a little bit when I was younger, but my whole life has been like this. I was pre-targeted before I was born, so I only know, this sort of thing and this dynamic, except the difference of facing the Mars recruiters was I was up close and personal with it, instead of it trying to get me from far away or steer me into it. I just... I walked right into it because I knew that there was no way I was going to be able to get away from it. I had to face them head on. I had to say no. I had to, claim my power in those moments. And so this is what I help people with. It's like, you're not a victim to this. No matter how attacked you are or how compromised you might feel, you can gain the upper hand here. Allow it to strengthen you. Allow it to expand you. Allow it to bring out the goodies, and that's what I let it, help me do. And now it's like, I'm always dealing with plants and attacks, but I'm getting really good at just handling it when it comes up.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering. Do they still today, I guess?
Oh, God, it's unbelievable all the time. You wouldn't even believe it.
I bet you. We've got another call here. We've got James on the line. James, welcome aboard.
How you doing, Michael?
Welcome.
Hi, Laura. This is Jimmy from Boston.
Hey there, how you doing?
You good? How's it going?
Good.
Yeah, you left us pretty... Huh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you left us early there on Sunday. You missed Rosban. He was powerful again this year. Fantastic presentation. We gave him a quick standing O. It's I mean, he just blows us away, you know. And you missed him on Sunday. You took off.
Yeah, I had to. I had to get back to my kids.
Yeah. I guess, is Mark with you? Hi, Mark, if he's with you.
He's not. He's on the road.
Yeah, you know, we'd like Mark to come on. You know, Michael doesn't know about Mark. You know, if Mark wants to come on the radio, we'd love to hear his message on L&M. That'd be great, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm open to anybody. If as long as they're sharing truth, I'm all for it.
Oh, you got a powerful message there, Michael.
Great.
Yeah, well, speaking of Ron Ben, you know, I wanted to tell you the thing about Alfred. Remember last year, Alfred marched a bunch of people over to the Commodore Barry's statue and did a meditation. Did you know that he did that 2 years ago at Free Your Mind too?
Not quite sure.
Well, anyway, you know that guru, right? Well, actually, Rosban told about Commodore Barry statue and how the ley lines and makes it powerful and stuff, right? So what Alfred did, he went and he marched down with the guru, and they went and they meditated at the Commodore Barry statue, which would, you know, supposedly it's demonic with the burial of some Indians underneath, as according to Rosban and stuff. Well, they went over there and they meditated, and what they meditated on was to rid the downtown Philadelphia of the police presence while the Free Your Mind conference was going on. And I actually walked downtown on the day after they did this, and I was stunned. I was saying, this is downtown Philadelphia? I did not see one cop, not one cruiser, nothing. And this is downtown Philadelphia, I'm saying. And it was like, 6 days after the marathon bombing, and not one cop, nowhere. And I used to, you know, work in Philadelphia, and I'm like, this ain't right. Something's going on here. And I even mentioned it in the chat room here in L&M. And the next day, Alfred come on live with Michael, and he said that they had gone down to the Commodore Barry Bridge, and they meditated, and what they meditated on was ridding the presence of police in downtown Philadelphia. And it actually worked. Isn't that wild?
That is wild. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The power of thought.
Yes.
Meditation. Yeah, I told Mark, I told Bob, I told all of them. I said, yeah, it really worked. I actually told Alfred the day after that he'd come on the radio. I think it was Facebook or something. I mentioned it to him. So I did tell Alfred. I didn't tell anybody else. But I told everybody this past week, and they were blown away by it. That's what I wanted to tell you when I invited you out to lunch there last week there.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a power of prayer, and you know, there's something that when minds become collective and together, you know, there's something about that. I mean, it works. I think Art Bell years ago did an experiment on his show with a guest and with the listeners, and it's something about clearing rain clouds or something, and it worked. It's strange stuff.
Yeah, I guess Nori had done that last year too, and then it like rained for a few days in LA. And how do we stop it now?
Yeah. Right.
Anything else, James?
Huh?
I say anything else?
Yeah, I just want to mention, Laura, that you know, when your last talk, you mentioned that everybody should get implant checks, and I told you that I just got one, and they get this crazy signal. And I actually bought an EMF meter, and I should get it probably tomorrow or the next day. And I'm going to bring it over there to Contact in the Desert. And if you want to get checked out, or if anybody wants to get checked out, I'll check you out. Because I'll have that meter.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also, and that's important. So thank you. Because you know, mentioning it, it's like, okay, well, you know, I have a lot of people write me, and they're like, okay, well, where do I check it? I have some referrals. You know, but that's excellent that, you know, you're another, you know, go-to person on that.
Right. I won't charge anybody. I'll just say, here, I'll just check you out, you know. I mean, it was $50 for that implant check that I got. It kind of blew me away. They found something in my arm, something in my back, and then they freaked out because they found some kind of signal that's emitting some kind of own frequency, and they're like freaking out. I'm like, well, how
In
often
you,
is
James? This is in you? They found...
Yeah, in me.
Well, we got to get you on the schedule, buddy.
Well, I told you I've been taking at age 4, at 4.5, I thought, and I ran into Sandy Mack over there at in Phoenix, and she's going to do a regression on me, and she did some pre-work, and she told me I was actually taking 4 times total, and she checked the last time I was taking, and it was 7 years ago, and that was when I started going to these UFO conferences. So that's crazy. I'm like, huh? Me taking 7 years ago? It blew me away. So I'm really trying to get regressed pretty quick this summer. I'm actually going to try to drive to Phoenix and get up with her and try to get regressed if I can be hypnotized, because I always believed I could never be hypnotized, But you never know. So if I get tired, if I drive and get tired, maybe I can, There's never no, I can't be, so we'll see.
All right.
Hi, Laura. Thanks a lot, Laura.
Thank you so much. See you soon, I hope.
All right, James. Thank you, brother.
Right. Yeah, Michael, thank you. Good night.
Good night. And Laura, one more call here. We've got 563 area code. I believe this is Mario. You're on Late Night in the Midlands. Welcome. Hello?
Thank you, Michael.
Oh,
Laura, I have a couple questions for you, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure.
My first question would be, do you now or have you in the past been affiliated with any secret societies like Illuminati, Freemasonry, anything like that?
No, and in actual fact, it's funny because, people might wonder about the Eisenhower family, and to set the record straight, we don't have trust funds. I've worked my butt off my whole life. There's no big money, which usually is a sign of something related to Illuminati. I've done hypnoregression. I've really, I'm very close to my family. We're all very heart-based. There's nothing weird. It's very, just very simple. And yeah, it's not an Illuminati family. And as far as, the choices that I've had, if I've ever had the choice, absolutely not. Maybe I'd be the person that kicks down the door and says, I've had many dreams about that, and maybe, how could I do that? But no, I'm not. I don't even do ritual. I mean, I do, ceremonial things with essential oils and stones, and I understand the language of the occult because I realized I had to because I was such a big target, and I just need to understand the inner workings of everything. But everything for me is the right use of power, and it's connected to Gaia. It's connected to integrity and service to others. And the thing is, when I do have money, I tend to share it, and I have 2 pairs of shoes to my name. I never go shopping, so I'm not made of that. That's not my energy, and I don't feed on others. I'm not a vampire, so no, it's never been my thing. But I do have a strong connection to the Magdalene energy and the original Templars, and a lot of the stuff that relates to the symbology I can identify. And sometimes I meet people that haven't entered that corruption that recognize my soul signature, but I don't participate in anything. I don't join anything. I'm very much a solitary being, and I like it that way. I'm not saying that it's negative to join groups. I need to just think for myself, and that's just where it's at for me. I think community is important, though, but I think free thinking and staying as clear with that, we get everything we need, and to me, we're in a sacred energy. We're on a sacred planet, and to me, every moment is sacred. And I'm always in that zone, of honoring that and serving it. So,
Laura, I like that. Thank you. My next question would be all right, the Ark. I was in the military about 25 years ago, and while I was in the desert, someone asked me, have you been to the Ark? Could you, if you'd like, or you can pass on this question, could you tell me what you know about the Ark?
About the what? I'm sorry?
The Ark.
Of the Covenant?
I heard you mention it here about half an hour ago.
Oh, the Ark. Oh, no, yeah, to get to Mars, yeah. It's spelled like ARC. That's how it was presented to me. I think it was just some sort of ship. I mean, it wasn't teleportation or jump rooms like Andrew Bashago. I never saw it
Correct.
visually, but I saved a bunch of emails that mentioned it, and that was just the mode of transportation. I think it was just, yeah, kind of like a craft. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
I never saw it.
Okay, just one more question then. I think for humanity to go ahead and regain sovereignty or control over humanity's destiny, we need to go ahead and take control of the time machines, and I believe the elites, the time control machines, they control that. I believe the reptilians, Illuminati, Vatican, filth, Freemasonry filth. I believe they control that elite mechanisms. How would you go about trying to regain control of such highly advanced technology?
Wow, what an awesome question, and a very difficult one. Gosh, well, okay, first of all, we have to expose the people that are using the technologies and using them incorrectly. We have to understand our galactic history. We have to understand, it's kind of like if you're going to be in nature and you're going to be camping, you got to understand your environment. You have to know if there's snakes and scorpions and, what is required, what the climate is. I mean, the more we know, the better off we are. And we also have to understand, our DNA potential. I mean, the whole reason there's these agendas is because they're threatened by us and what we're unfolding into. They traded in their potential to reach what we're able to reach because they wanted to be controllers. And they don't want anybody else to incarnate into those lines and heal those races. That's why there was all these rebellions, and that's actually why the dark technologies were put in place to affect the grid lines, to keep the healing from happening, because souls can incarnate into certain lines and actually heal those lines. And they created like seals and like a way for that not to happen. So, but they do have the opportunity to make a choice to incarnate into a line where they can heal, but they have to make that decision as a soul. So, I mean, what do I do? I mean, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because that's sort of like a part of my mission. So it's a hard question, but it's kind of ingrained in me as being something that I'm going to address. I got to get through Hillary Clinton first in this whole election. And keep exposing everything, but really focusing on the positive. But, as all this happens, hopefully this stuff will be more unearthed, more exposed, more revealed. And then what do we do with these technologies? Well, I mean, we're going to be working with, benevolent beings. I mean, I know we have a lot of assistance. I think, working with tone, frequency, and color and, free energy and understanding, the way vibration and tone and frequency can offset some of these other things, I think we just have to kind of like keep building towards what's going to work so that the stuff that really doesn't or has a role that is more about manipulation just sort of takes a back seat. If we try and engage in the battle too much, I think it ends up draining us. So I think, touching upon it, but moving in the direction of, where we are not manipulated by it and we're not falling for where they're using it to rewrite history or all this other stuff, then it sort of loses its ability to have, any real influence. So they're just playing with toys. It's like they just have a bunch of toys that don't really have any, they don't have any potency anymore because we've moved on and we're moving into a greater vibration and working with, advanced technologies that are in harmony with nature. I mean, we'll have the whole cosmos, the intelligence of the cosmos and this planetary consciousness and all these humans and all these races, it's going to completely wipe out anything they're doing because we completely outnumber them. The level of malevolent compared to benevolent is high. It's completely different. There's way more benevolent beings in this cosmos than there's these service to self, dark ones. It's just they have duped and enslaved a certain portion of humanity, and it's the reality that we're seeing right now. And it's temporary. So I just think we have to keep moving in the direction of what works and not be fooled anymore and educate ourselves as much as humanly possible so that we can see the traps, develop ourselves and our psychic abilities and our intuition so that, we always, have that working for us. And, it's going to lose its it's not even going to matter anymore. It's going to be like in a warehouse, just completely like neutralized and unable to really work. Because as long as it's working on us, it has power. But we're the ones that decide whether or not it's going to work. And we have to just wake up as much as possible. And then I think everything naturally falls into place. I mean, that's part of divine justice, That's a part of like, if we keep making good choices in our life, there's rewards. If we keep making healthy choices for our body, we start to feel the benefits of that. So if we keep moving in a positive direction, nature is going to do its magic. It's going to hold, there's going to be justice. I mean, because that's part of natural law. But there can't be justice if we're holding on to the programmings or if we're too resentful and angry to be able to move into the solution. It allows it to persist because we're holding on to the burden of their mistakes in our energy field instead of freeing ourselves and releasing it, which means it'll bounce back to them and knock them on their ass.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. I like your approach about informing the American people and the public on what needs to be done. Just one more thing, and I'll take my answer off the air. What would be the top 3 or the top 5 things on top of your list that you would do as president if you were given the chair?
Well, I think the priority is taking care of those that aren't getting their needs met, making sure that there's adequate water, to those that need water, that, those that are hungry are getting fed. I mean, and along those lines, also come, finding the people that have been getting in the way of that, and all this imbalance and injustice. But I want to take care of the needs of, humans first, those that need it most, and look at what the priorities are. And I think they're pretty obvious. Let's take care of our environment. Let's take care of our humanity. Enough with this, like, the elitists get all the technologies and they're sitting on all this money and we're sitting there, on the other side of it all, trying to support our planet and each other, having to work these jobs and having to be in the system. And that's got to stop. We have to empower the people, that have, the solutions. We have to fund the people that, have invented things that are going to, change this paradigm, and, start to look at, Tesla technology and just some of the things that, advanced beings, have their hands on, and start to be ready to approach, these higher beings, and be ready to approach, our universal family out there, including maybe ones that are going to want our help when they realize that they lost in the game, because they're going to end up giving up, and a lot are going to want, us to, forgive and to bring them in. And so, how we can do that responsibly and also hold them accountable and have, that unity mindset so that we can heal and invite those beings home. And then the ones that, don't want to, they're going to be isolated, and we're going to have to just, really look at it. But the immediate needs of humanity and the environment, and the empowerment of those leaders, which are all of us, and ways to develop, our talents and skills and not be stuck in systems that, only adhere to a certain learning style and only reward those that are easily programmed. I mean, everything would be turned around. We're in an organic system. We're not in an artificial matrix if I'm president. And we are going to detox and wean ourselves off of that artificial matrix, and we're going to step into who we truly are, what we're made of, what this planetary body has to offer, and we're going to, really learn what it means to have morals again, and what it means to have a spiritual disposition without pushing belief systems onto each other, where we can just love each other and live by the principles of love and respect and, appreciating our differences and just all this stuff, it's a complete rehabilitation.
Right.
But in a way that I just really feel is going to work and that's fair and balanced and respect, just everything. And God, now I want to run for president. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for the call, Mario. I appreciate it. All right. And Laura, I've got a couple questions here from our chat that were PM'd to me here. So I'll throw these at you too. And then I'll give you the floor to get out anything that you'd like. Says, Rudy asked if, with this technology, this time travel technology, if they'd be able to go back and avoid disclosure or ascension.
If they were to be able to stop that?
Yeah, if they would be able to go back and make sure it don't happen.
I think that's what they're doing.
That's me too.
That's exactly what they're doing, and they're doing everything they possibly can. So, some mornings I wake up and I'm like, somebody just tinker with the timelines again. I mean, I can feel it. we naturally time travel. I go into dreams and I close time loops, and I have dreams where I'm like completely interacting with these folks. And I've had a lot of readings where beings from the future made negotiations with me, and I've been working timelines, for a long time, and, everything connected to the Stargates and what this window period's about. I've been on this mission for so long that it's almost like it's one big lifetime, there's no real separation, and that's exactly what they've been doing. And, but, just as much as they've been preparing for our enslavement in this window period, there's a lot of us that have been preparing to help us move on to the next level. And, it's obvious, which one is supported by nature and what is beyond, this particular sector of the galaxy where we're very compromised. It's one of the darkest planets, but it's one of the most beautiful and divine, with the potential it holds and what it offers. So yeah, I would say that they're already doing that, and you can't prevent something this big. You can't stop spirit. You can't stop beings that are devoted and connected in this way. And believe me, they've tried to do everything they possibly could to me to get me to do what they wanted. I've been killed numerous times in past lives for what I do now. And now it's like it's game over because we're lifting the veil between life and death. They know I'm just as powerful, in spirit form or on the other side as I am here, because I'm already on the other side. I already recognize my multidimensional being, and whatever about death. It's like, and I tell them, if you do, it's not going to help matters, because my consciousness is still on this mission, and you're not going to win, So, they think that, shooting people and offing people is going to be helpful, but it's like the soul never dies. They reincarnate. So you're not getting rid of anybody. In fact, you're pissing people off more that are going to come back with even more powerful missions. So, there's no way to stop this, because it's from the source of all that is. It's from the unconditional love of spirit. It's from, God, goddess energies. It's from these higher dimensional worlds, and we're all linked to it. And it cannot be defeated. It's just impossible. But we can be manipulated and give our free will away and lose ourselves, and be temporarily enslaved. But I know that every soul is going to make it back, particularly if the longing is there. You have to want it. If you don't want it, then you're not going to start to create ways to get there. So creating the interest, is that huge seed that we have to plant. People have to want it, and then there's nothing that can stop us. Once we claim our free will and we own it, there's nothing that, there's no way for another being to take somebody else's free will. What they do is they manipulate us out of it, and we hand it over, and we say, okay, sure, we'll vote for you. We're enabling this stuff, and we complain about it, but we got to stop enabling it.
That's right. We fund it and we empower it. It's just like a demon, give them credence and they'll come mess with you. Well, that's the same thing with this system. As long as we continue to accept it, we really have no one to blame but ourselves for it getting worse, because we're allowing it. And people say, oh, well, they've got more guns than us. They've got bigger weapons. Well, you know what?
So what?
Yeah, who cares? I'd rather die standing up than die on my knees. And so, and besides, it's just a physical death. So.
It is, and like, and say they did wipe us all out, then guess what? We're all going to wake up somewhere else together, and that might be our ascension. We have to not fear this whole death thing. We have to be more concerned about not being controlled, and it's. But we don't want to put ourselves in the line of fire if we don't feel comfortable. I'm not saying that either. I just am made that way. I mean, that's just me. I don't expect other people to be like that.
Right.
But I like to be right in its face. I like to challenge it. It's like a bully, and I like to look at it right in the eyes and say, I don't think so. And I want to remind it, of the very reason it's doing these agendas. It's because it's scared of us. And I'd rather, remember that than cower in fear and give my power away, because I feel like there's no choice here. And there is a choice, and I actually... There's a part of me that almost likes standing up to them and likes this confrontation, because I know that it's going to shift things, and I know it's the only way. And in a sense, we have to look at it like we're confronting ourselves. We're being tested.
Yeah, that's right. The only way to to stop a bully is to stand up to him. If you're going to be afraid, well, the bully's going to always have power over you. And we've got one more question here. Please ask Laura to explain what an archon is and is not.
Well, it's kind of complicated, because it's more than just... I mean, I appreciate John Lash, and I'm not questioning or doubting anything that he's saying, but I think there's a lot to the picture, and I think he really covers it well. But archons are like mind parasites. I mean, they're like astral entities. I mean, we can even consider that some of the lower ET races could be considered archons. But archons, the word means ruler. So when you think about it, when we fell into this system, this Milky Way galaxy, when it separated from Andromeda, you know, all of a sudden now we're dealing with sort of a demiurgic energy, and we're dealing with, you know, this Luciferian energy, and we're dealing with like this goddess energy and like this drama, you know, and then the Christ energy, and this whole sort of architecture of like the soul kind of like coming undone with the goal of coming back together again. And so archons is sort of like the byproduct of when things start to separate. So as we are in a free will universe and the masculine and feminine became more differentiated, and, you know, this opposing sort of Luciferian energy came into the mix, and I'm not labeling it good or bad. I'm just saying that it's a part of our architecture, actually, and it's a part of that ego energy. It's a part of that false light, you know, that falls, that we get to redeem through rising from the depths of the underworld with our organic light. But it takes us into that zone, you know, when you know, we're led astray and we wake up and we realize we have to face our darkness. You know, that false light expires. And so archons are like the byproduct of all these archetypal dramas. You know, they're sort of the, like, you know, when you fight with somebody or there's negative energy, you can actually feel like, almost like there's something outside of you that grabs onto it, or intensifies it, you know, or that archons, you know, sort of prodded, you know, the discord. And basically, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, when we're creative beings, you know, there's always a byproduct. But if we don't clean up, if we don't clean house, we're going to attract flies and germs and parasites. If we don't keep our beings clear and clean, we're going to attract parasites. We're going to attract archons. And archons feed on places in us that we're either neglecting, we're either, you know, anything that represents imbalance. You know, we're either overdoing something or we're underdoing something. And it becomes sort of a breeding ground for them. Now, I allow them to teach me. And so if I'm out of balance and I notice archons, I'm like, cool, thank you. Clearly, I need to do something with myself in order to protect my space. I need to clear something because it's feeding on something. Or I need to recognize that there's a fracture or a wound that I'm not addressing that's attracting, you know, these kind of energies. So the rulers, though, are called archangels and archdemons. And that creates the duality of light and dark. So when we're on our paths, we attract assistance from archangels. We attract harassments from archdemons. When we understand our own light and dark and we begin to work with it much more consciously, then we are not working with one or the other so much. We have found our wholeness and we work directly with source and spirit. And I'm not saying working with archangels isn't a good idea, but we have to always keep our shadow in check, because just as much as we work with them, we might also be being yanked out in this other direction. So the more we understand our light and dark, and we can learn from archangels and archdemons, or just demons, you know, without, or just the angelics, and we recognize that these are creative forces that we're made of, and we can reconcile it within ourselves, this duality, then we create alchemy, and then we're really connected. And these are all helpers. But when we're in it, we don't see it as such. We resent the archons, we hate the archons, and, you know, we only want assistance from angels. But we have to understand that, you know, we're learning how to weave ourselves back into wholeness, and that when we came in and our DNA was compromised and we chose the path of duality and the tree of knowledge, you know, we have to kind of figure it out and wear a bunch of different hats until we have those epiphanies that help us to graduate. And, you know, and that graduation is really wholeness. You know, it's stepping into the center of the zodiac. It's incorporating and integrating all the cards of the tarot. It's accepting the Lucifer energy within us, the devil energy within us, the god, goddess, but it's allowing the higher aspects to run the show, where the other forces, you know, might do something different. You know, we just have to make sure that the right, you know, energetic is in the driver's seat, and then the rest falls into balance. And that's like the structure of the tree of life. But when the darker energies are running the show, then the goddess energy is suppressed, the Christ consciousness, you know, is misunderstood, and everything's out of whack. So it's a personal journey to find that archetypal harmony, and then we emit the solution into our environment, and we're not dealing with archons and dualities and rulership outside of ourself that pushes us in one direction or the other. Religion pushes us into rebellion. Rebellion reminds us that we need to purify. It's like, you know, and we just, but these secret societies, they're in a whole bunch of trouble. They've made serious agreements and contracts with the dark side, and but we have to accept that we might need to really help them too. There's been a lot of trauma and a lot of mind control in those family lines, and we have to remember that. And not making us against them so much. Create something that invites them back, and then see who doesn't agree and wants to maintain control, and then let's look to those people and see what we can do with them. But there's a lot of people that need our help and our unconditional love.
Yeah, that's for sure. Laura, I want to give you a couple minutes here to get out anything that you'd like, and I'd like to thank you so much for being a guest here on Late Night in the Midlands tonight. I've had you on before, and usually it was, with another host or what have you, and it was nice for you to be able to have time to get out so much information. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it, and I guess the only thing that I want to share is I'll be speaking in San Mateo, California, April 24th to 26th. And I would love, to do sessions with people. So if you are able to come, that would be great. There's Contact in the Desert, May 29th to 31st, I'll be speaking at. And, just a lot of different, events coming up. So my website's cosmicgaiasophia.com, and you can keep up with what I'm doing. Actually, I just noticed that it needs to be updated. And you can find me on Facebook and just, look into, the session work I do. And I just help you to get to know yourself more. I help you to, get more of you back to you, because all I do is reflect back what your wisdom is telling you to help you to heal, and you can find out about my readings on my website. And I do tarot, astrology, and clairvoyant sessions. To really just help, prepare the person for everything that we're dealing with, and to help clear them of maybe the past that keeps them stuck, and to help them unfold into their highest potential. And and I'm just, really grateful, and I just really appreciate everybody so much, and I'm just loving that we're all on this journey together, and we're having these conversations, and there's a lot to look forward to. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely, Laura. Well, thank you, and have a great night, and keep up the fantastic work that you do, and keep spreading the word. And we'll be in touch, and we'll have you back on in the near future. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, everybody. Laura Magdalene Eisenhower.
Is pushing belief systems on people. So I try and really empower the individual, because if we can turn on awareness to all the abilities that we have, people can find their way. And life is the great teacher. I mean, it gives us everything we need. And if we really simplify things and allow ourselves to be taught by our experiences and what our physical bodies are trying to tell us through symptoms, and what that inner calling is trying to say to us, we can really, emerge and be very empowered and liberated. And I think these are amazing times, but we have to, move through either the denial or the anger of betrayal. And, and then once we move through that, I think we just have a great opportunity to look at our skills and abilities and unite and start our own paradigm and empower ourselves as leaders and starve the system and walk away and start our own thing. Because why would we want to continue to vote for something that we already recognize is not dealing with the issues at hand? There's people still hungry. Our skies are still being sprayed. Injustices are still rampant. And, it's time to really look to ourselves and unite, because the governments are not going to really do anything. And I'm not saying, there's not going to be good leaders stepping in, but we got to get out of the dependency and start to be more self-sufficient, and then link up with what it means to be a part of a community and the greater whole, the mandala, the web of life on a deeper level as souls.
Yeah, and the way I see it is you're never going to get anybody real in leadership until everybody who's there now gets taken out. And I don't mean killed or any of that. I'm not going that far. Maybe some of them might deserve something like that. But I mean, cleaning all the seats out. Everybody needs to be dealt with accordingly, whether it be, if they've been corrupt, they need to be dealt with in the justice system, a real justice system, or at least nothing else fired and gotten out of there. They've held control for way too long, and what they're doing to this planet is really sad. I mean, you talked about belief systems, and I've talked with people who sit back. They believe this. They believe that the aliens are coming to save us. So they believe that Jesus is coming back to.
What's unfolding as far as what this planetary body has to offer.
Right.
And it just throws us off track, and that means that we're empowering a artificial timeline if we're not really understanding nature and this planetary body and our DNA and our blueprint. Because it's all been compromised, and we're born with amnesia, and so we're very vulnerable, and we've been taken advantage of. And so, to me, they're negative ego structures, and we easily enable them when we adopt these programmings. And a lot of people do, and they still, talk about conspiracy, but it really takes doing the work, not just being in touch with the information, but what it means to deprogram ourselves and really work together, and unify and, expose and bust the imposter. It's kind of like if you're in a relationship and you're being cheated on, and you find out, it's like everything's going to change from that point on. But as long as you're being duped, you can tell something's wrong, but you might not be able to put your finger on it. And now it's like everything's been exposed, and it's like, okay, now what are we going to do?
Well, then you also got those people who know they're being cheated on, and they choose to look the other way because they don't know how to handle it.
Right, and it's a huge deconstruction of their reality, and it can create a lot of upheaval. And because a lot of purging is involved, sometimes those that are trying to help, get thrown up on. It's kind of like it's heavy. And so that's why I do readings and sessions, because if I'm going to put out this information, and if I'm going to be on a mission, I want to be available to people. I want to help them through some of these initiations that the cosmos and some of these planetary alignments are helping to trigger, but we get taken advantage of. And so I just want to make myself available to step in and say, hey, go into the self, and let's really look at what you're made of. And we have our unique, soul signature and our own unique journey, but, that concept of oneness, to me is diversity and harmony. And, there's a common ground that we can all unite upon, but we have to really respect the individual and our unique contribution, and not try and steer people and be the very thing that we're trying to liberate ourselves from, which is presenting another form of control, which is, how we, relate to power, authority, and government in a world where, considering what the needs of Gaia and humanity are not really being addressed. And so I've just felt like, okay, leadership now, really seems to be more about discovering more and more about what our true origins are, what has been kept secret from us, and, what we're really made of and what our potential is. And so that brings us into this window period we're in. And that's always been a focal point throughout my life, this window period, this 2012 December 21st date, and how it extends into a larger window of opportunity for us to move into higher earth energies. And I was understanding it through, the Venus transits and my connection to the Magdalene Sophia energies, and how a lot about the military-industrial complex and some of the darker agendas are trying to keep us from what this shift is really about. And that's what, these timelines, when people talk about timelines, artificial timelines and organic ascension timelines, it's kind of like, always in front of us as a choice.
And it's so hard to grasp for the average person to grasp these, these other timelines. I mean, I could think about it and I could say, yeah, I almost would bet my life that they exist. But to be able to actually wrap my mind around them is just, it's almost impossible in some ways, Yeah,
I mean, it's a lot. And I like to try and simplify it. It's sort of like the difference between, seeing a flower and admiring it and then understanding the biology of it and everything that makes it function in the way that it does. And then with all the technologies we have, that are capable of mimicking creation, we're sort of being fed a imitation version, but in the form of sort of a nightmare, where our creative energies are being used, our minds are being controlled, and we're being manipulated, and it's very difficult to know where the true path lies without doing immense inner work and really looking deep within the self, and really paying attention to, what our bodies are trying to tell us, with the symptoms it has, and just, that inner voice that it's just crying out saying, is this really all there is? Is this really, is this reality? Just some of the expectations and programmings related to, I guess, how it should look and unfold. But of course, it depends on what culture you're born into, and kind of some of these other things, and then just what war has done to us and how so much has tried to conquer and divide us, and then the culture of what children are raised under, with just the media and the television, and just what's happening with our food and just how the school systems are. And so I never was interested in any of that. I was always thinking outside of the box and always journeying into these multidimensional realms, and I felt like I was kind of living a double life. And so the mission is really to empower what this organic ascension is about. There's a lot of teachings that I think lead us astray and make it not so much about it being an inner shift within us, but more about something that's just going to happen outside of us that we should expect. And I like to bring in a lot of focus to what it's going to take to be in alignment with it, and what we need to do to be plugged into what's real instead of what's artificial.
And you're right. I mean, we've got whoever's at the helm, whoever's in total control of all this. They've recreated everything. It's like they're trying to become those gods that we've read about. They want to create life. They want to control the weather. They want to be able to take life. If they could build another Earth, an entire artificial Earth, they do it, and they might have already done that. I don't know.
Well, that's what this matrix is. It's like this big overlay on, a very divine planet that's seated as an ascension planet, and, events in our galactic history created a necessity for us to have this experience in order to understand the right use of power, because we're in a free will universe, and the concept of ego, creates an identification with power that isn't always in alignment with, unity and staying connected with.
With that, folks, I'm going to bring Laura Magdalene Eisenhower on the show with us, and let's find out a little more. It's always good to educate ourselves. Good evening, Laura. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Michael?
I am doing fine, and it is a pleasure to have you here tonight. I thank you for taking time out.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really good to be here.
Oh, absolutely. Last time we had some issues and we weren't able to get it done, and I'm glad that we got you back, because there was a lot of disappointed people last time. They love hearing from you. You've got a lot of fans, Laura.
Oh, that's cool.
But I thought we'd start out maybe with a little background. How tell us again, and I know you probably get tired of talking about it, but we never get tired of hearing it. Tell us a little bit about how all this began, where it all started with you.
Gosh, it's just been a lifelong thing, I have to say. It's changed a lot over the course of, the years. Starting, as a child, just kind of really being hit with just this concept of, gosh, I'm on a mission. I really can tell, I'm here for something very specific. And over the course of my life, I've just been making more and more sense out of it. I think it really relates to, just what I was sensitive to energetically, as far as what was going on the planet. And just really feeling into my own personal soul journey. And then, you got to ask a bunch of questions if you end up in the Eisenhower family. It's kind of like, okay. And I've just been really processing a lot of information, my whole life, and it's really been about connecting dots. And I've just had a very interesting, experience along the way that's just been very unique to my own journey, and then how it relates to Eisenhower's administration and some of the things that went on during his presidency and things related to the Second World War, and how I've just always felt a link with him. I just started to see in the bigger picture that it has a lot to do with